Hey, I'm Lucid. This is D. Welcome to the Widen Your Lens podcast, business kind of career podcast. We kind of examine every the different ways people go through this thing we call life and just making a living. My just a little introduction about my experience. I am 29 years old. I forgot how old I was, and I am a internet marketing, and I've been in the internet marketing for about 10, 12 years, and worked many different places, whether it's the entertainment industry, to food, to hospitality. I've been all over it. Now, recently, I've walked away from internet marketing to start my new company, Lucid Kitty, where we are working to empower black creators and creators of color in this new digital age. D, you want to introduce
Uh,
yourself?
sure. So I'm D, 51 years old, and I've been, wearing multiple hats, but I started my career in the Marine Corps with radio communications, then moved into IT, got out of the Corps, stuck with IT, system administration, um, did some government contracting, worked as a civil servant, and now I work on cloud-based systems. Again, more system administration, a little bit of development. Um, so I've got a lot of experience working on IT systems and government systems, and that's what I'm doing up to today. It's been an interesting journey thus far.
And I would love to, and I would, want to really want to dive more into that journey, as you say, because it's about 30 years of experience. I'm sure you have many stories to talk about, but this show, I want to talk about a bit about what this show is about, and it's really about, as I said, exploring the career paths and the business paths that many people of color and others have built for themselves, and really exploring all the different ways that we make it through life, even through all the hardship, especially things like this last year, which has ended many but has started many careers as well. I wanted to first really start off, talking a little bit about your experience growing up, and getting, making the decision to go into the Marine Corps, which, like I said, was your shooting off point to where you are now, is where I can at least say is a pretty, from my point of view, a comfortable place. From if you want to tell your story.
Well, I I can say that I'll do it as best as I can. I'm a first generation American. My parents are both Trinidadian, right, from the small twin islands of Trinidad and Tobago. And I ended up being born in Puerto Rico because my dad was an electrician working on an oil rig, and he got a contract in Puerto Rico. My mom followed him to Puerto Rico while he was working on that contract with the three of us, myself and my two brothers, and four of us, myself, my two brothers, and my little sister in tow, my big sister in tow. And I was born in Puerto Rico. So I think officially I was the first one in our immediate family to be born in the United States. And, being immigrants from the Caribbean, um, it's just challenging being black immigrants. It's challenging. My parents didn't know anything about America or the the way of life in America. They somehow made their way over to Miami, and there's a thousand stories, but the way parents tell stories from their generation, I feel that they often don't want to give you all the details because they want to focus on the good, which is now we're here, versus the bad of the past. And I kind of believe that's a mistake because I think it's important to tell tell your children especially, the hardships you've encountered, because the only way we move forward is by not repeating the same mistakes. So if you don't tell me the problems you ran into and why you think you at least ran into those problems, I can't learn from them. I'm destined to repeat those problems, right? And it's one thing that I believe is, is necessary, right? Um, so we ended up in Miami, and from Miami, I know we made our way to New York, Chicago, the Midwest. And to jump ahead, because I kind of really wasn't prepared to give my bio, but to jump ahead to joining the Marine Corps, I had some what I now understand are learning disabilities. It wasn't enough just coming over to America with parents who spoke their version of English, which is, the Caribbean dialect is different from the American dialect of English, um, in the house all the time, to then going to school having Caribbean accents when we were small because that's how our parents spoke, and teachers not being able to understand us, being sent into bilingual classes when we already spoke English. Um, but I also had, some learning disabilities, and not to focus on those, but because we didn't get the attention that we believe we would have gotten if we were born in, 1995, and we're told and teachers were trained or better trained to acknowledge children with learning disabilities, we ended up where we ended up. Sometimes I did really well in school and sometimes I did poorly. But my parents never had a lot of money. They were divorced early when I was young. Dad did stay in our life. Um, Mom and him communicated regularly, and but we were always poor, so we didn't see college as an option, and we didn't want to stay in the ghettos of Queens, New York. And I say ghettos, there were worse places. I ended up going to high school, um, living in Jamaica, Queens, and then South Ozone Park, Queens. I saw my guidance counselor once in 4 years. Well, 3 years of being at the school, right? My guidance counselor sat down with me, I think in my 12th grade year of school, and she said, "What are your plans?" And I'm like, well, I think I'm going to join the military because you know, what are other options? I'm not going to sit here and go and try and work at a Burger King. And her reply to me, I remember, you remember some of the important things or the traumatic things that happened to you. And her reply to me was like, you have other options. And I'm like, yeah, well, what are they? She's like, well, you can go to college. We do have programs. And it's like, this is my 12th grade year. And I think it was, no kidding, my last 2 months of school. And it's like, now you're presenting other options to me. I was like, yeah, I leave to boot camp, 1 month after I graduate. I've already got my date locked in. I've already signed paperwork, and my mother signed paperwork with the recruiter. And at that point, just for younger folks listening to this, up until the day you leave, you can say no if you want to. But they don't let you know that. But anyways, my guidance counselor, you know, she didn't give me any guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you have other options, and it's like, what other options are you talking about? So, anyways, I went away, joined the Marine Corps. I did decent on my test going in, but again, I could have prepared a lot better. I didn't know that, there were study programs you could get into, and you could get books that teach you about the ASVAB. I definitely recommend this for anyone who's joining the military. And the Marine Corps opened up a lot of opportunities for me. They showed me that, you know, even though I didn't know I had learning disabilities, when you have learning disabilities like dyslexia, like attention deficit disorder, and no one ever identifies that to you, what you start to believe as a child is that you are just stupid, right? And people will call you stupid. Your teachers will say, well, you've obviously got problems, or say things to you
Hmm.
during during the quote unquote learning process that I don't know why you're not getting this, right? And of course, kids are far more cruel. They'll say that you're stupid, right? And
Yeah.
like this guy's an idiot. So what I learned when I'm studying concepts like wave propagation and delivering power to a device and sending signals in the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps teaches you so that you learn, you're proficient at this task. Um, is I learned that I'm not stupid. This is when I really, when it, after I thought I was smart at one point, and then I thought I'm not really that bright. And but the Marine Corps showed me that I am pretty smart, because here I am, in a classroom of people from all over America, and I'm doing just as well, and in many cases better than the rest of them, because of the way that the military teaches you to learn something, which is far different from your traditional classroom. And I would graduate always in the top 10% of a class, um, and 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 that's all the classes we had. Going from learning radio concepts to NCO school to microwave school to LAN, local area network schools in Okinawa, Japan. Um, I always did well, and it's because of how things were delivered, and how you were tested. You were tested. You. I need to be in an environment. I learned I need to be in an environment where I'm actually putting my hands on things, or accomplishing the actual task, like the theories, and trying to apply mathematical formulas to esoteric problems. That just didn't work for my mind, and it definitely didn't work for the way that I see things, because numbers would flip, sounds would sound differently. I would have to hear a word 3 or 4 times to get what that actual word meant. Like I pick up intonations different. So I learned all of these things, like, of course, later in life. But the Marine Corps taught me that, well, no, you're not an idiot. And then I studied for the ASVAB while I was in the Marine Corps again. I took the test again. I scored much higher than I did, and I was working on trying to go towards the officer track, but I kept missing windows, because I still didn't have my thing my I still didn't have my act together. And what I learned about those early years in the Marine Corps, I spent 12 years in the Corps, almost 12 years. Um, what I learned about the early years in the Corps, and I think this is important about all life, and it's also important to understand that all jobs, all environments, they're not created equal. All military organizations aren't created equal. But, if I could tell folks anything, um, is it's really important to seek out a mentor and seek out a support network in any endeavors that you undertake, right? Try and find people that have done what you want to do. Try and find people that, instead of telling you you can't do something, they're at least trying to show you ways that you can do it, right? They may not have all the answers, but the answer is never no, right? And I think it's essential for youngsters, but I believe anyone, to find that group of people, find that individual. Mentorship is very important. To segue a bit, I believe that our elderly in America, and I can only speak of America, are very undervalued, and we take them and we put them in a corner and we never access them. And the elderly, they're not old operating systems, right? And I think this is how we look at them sometimes. I'm always going to make these nerd comparisons because this is my world, like geeks, nerds, technology. Like, you're not going to go and try and fire up a original Windows 3 operating system or something like that. You're not going to do it, right? But the elderly is not that. That person may not know, how to open up a Google Docs, or how to, tweet their thoughts, but they have tons of life experience, and that life experience is translatable to events that will occur in your life, because life is life. And I think we are hurting ourselves by not keeping this elderly life experience alive. They can not only help us um, with tasks that we want to accomplish, but they can help us make our ways through life. Another example, again, to segue a bit, is I think one of the big things that have changed is just in the raising of children. Right now, to have the average middle class household needs two parents working. Well, if two parents are working from, what is supposed to be 9 to 5, and it's never 9 to 5, it's closer to 7 to 7, right? If two parents are working from 9 to 5 and then trying to raise children, well, who's really there to be there with the kids? And I think, parents, grandparents should be there. But what we've done is we either move far away from that support network, or or never bring them to us. We move far away from them or never access them because we believe that things are so different that they can't really be of assistance. And I definitely believe it takes a tribe to raise a child effectively. But I know I've gone well off the course.
Yeah.
But back to
No, I mean
ment.
that's a great point in terms of at least of the elder. I mean, to not, before you go back,
Hmm.
is because I've actually long ago, back in one of my series back in the day, in the early pre 2010 days, right, before YouTube was really YouTube as we know it. I was one of the series I wanted to do was talking to the elderly people that at least around me, and then hopefully branching off more and just getting their stories, because that's something that I would say is one of the things that separates humans from animals. Even though we aren't that different, we have thumbs, so we're bigger. Is the fact that because of our lifespan, we can take a hold of our intelligence that, let's say, octopuses and cephalopods can't take. Even though they're highly intelligent creatures, they don't have the lifespans of us to pass on that knowledge, right? And I think our evolution is heavily aided by, like I said, all that experience, all that knowledge that we've gained. Because really, for as humans, we haven't been around that long, time wise, evolution wise, for really that much to change. But we've advanced so far because of our ability to pass knowledge from our elderly to our youngest,
Yeah.
like, which is like several at times several generations, like over 100 years of knowledge of one person to a new being, and then also be able to collect knowledge from people long gone to pass on,
And
which
even
animals
people from
cannot do,
other societies, right?
who will
So,
never see, right, never
yeah,
meet.
exactly. And you, you- you're I agree with what you're saying. I think the elderly are one of our most undervalued resources that in America today. And if we could find some way to utilize them, we would prosper as a country, and also they would prosper because I was just watching this story recently about this 91-year-old police officer, and getting to the age 51, this is when your peers who haven't already died, depending on the type of life you've lived, people who work in the military or do law enforcement, they sometimes tend to have
Shorter
shorter
lifespans.
lifespans. But for your average person, when you hit 51, this is when you start losing people that you've known for quite some time. I won't say they're always your friends, but this is where you hear the story about, hey, Dave passed away, or Bob has cancer, or Sharon you know lost a limb or something like that. And but anyways, we're talking about longevity now. I believe that it's important for us to be useful, or to at least feel that we're useful, to keep doing something. That when we do retire and we're sitting on the porch and doing nothing else, or no one comes to see us, or even talks with us, like, we lose that will to live, and we feel like we're useless, so we just expire. And I think one important part of longevity, and what do I know? I'm not an anthropologist, right? But I think it's really important to say that to I think it's really important to be useful. If you feel that your life is of worth, that you are useful to the world, or at least to the people that are important to you, and someone believes that you are important, it will make you live longer. But that's just me thinking out loud, right? I've never studied that. And
Well, I mean, in my anthropology 101, like that's it is important. Community uh, is an important on the is important on hierarchy and the things of needs, and community is one of them. So you're absolutely correct. At least in my my very little 101 knowledge of anthropology, where I compared evolution to the X-Men and got an A for the paper. So what do I know, right?
yeah,
But yeah, you made a really good point about that. But yeah, but in terms of back to experience, but yeah, talking about your experience and like especially going through like doing all these things with your learning disabilities, especially with the military, showing you that there are other ways to learn, and not just that. When you had this other way to learn, I think the great line you had is the Marine Corps showed me that I was smart, or at least not verbatim, but that I was actually pretty smart. Uh, I think it's very important because, as you said, a lot, even to this day, right? I dealt with it, right? Our institutions aren't teaching everyone properly, right? They're teaching everyone how to take tests, and that's not how everyone learns, right? Even without learning disabilities. So
yeah,
unfortunately, we're leaving a lot of people behind. A lot of people are, like you said, growing up feeling stupid or don't feeling like they're not enough because the other options just weren't ever presented to them
yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of to show them their value, show them where they actually do excel at and how they can excel.
I think that statement that you just made of showing them their value, I think it's very important. We went through this phase. So let me finish that thought. It's very important to show children and people their value, right? If you believe you do not have any value, you're not going to be a contributing member to society, and it's going to cause, a host of other issues. Um, but also, I believe that we need to also acknowledge, just like, you know, when you go grocery shopping and you pick up eggs, right? Those eggs aren't more valuable to you than the bread you're going to pick up, which is not more valuable to you than the milk you're going to buy, right? Because all of those things together give you the ingredients to a recipe, to a meal. They allow you to sustain yourself. They're all equally important, right? Even though they're very different things. They're all food, right? So uh, I think another issue in our culture and in many cultures is that how we measure value, how we measure intelligence, right? If you're not good at math, then you're not smart. Well, so so how about that mathematician who can't draw a picture, right? Or that mathematician who who
Or Zu's a flat earther.
well, not even
He's good at
that.
math, but
Well,
he
not
doesn't believe the Earth is round.
but not only that, he's a great mathematician, but he can't run in a straight line, for 20 minutes, right? Or he doesn't have the hand-eye coordination to, throw a dart at a dartboard.
You're just
So,
talking about natural talent. Natural
well,
talent more
well,
is yeah.
so this is the discussion, right? Categorizing things. There are, in my opinion, and again, what do I know? There are many types of geniuses. Some are learned, some we have an innate talent to. But they all, at the end of the day, take work, right? No Olympic athlete comes out of the womb, running a 4-minute mile, right? Or so no mathematician, Albert Einstein, they thought he was an idiot, right? He thought he couldn't read, and he had problems writing. And my man, unlocked the power of the atom. So, and part of that is he was extremely smart. He was talented in a way. He had his type of genius, and he was allowed to to go forth and be supported once he found what he was good at. And but it takes an Albert Einstein, but it also takes all of these other talented people to make a world, to make a society, to move us forward. And our measure of intelligence, our measure of what is valuable to the world, it fits these categories that I don't believe are always uh, best for the people who have to be squeezed into those categories, right? Because I'm not good at mathematics, I can never be a scientist, right? Or I'm not really that more valuable. For instance, teachers themselves. There's something to be said to uh, someone with a doctorate teaching a class versus, let's just say, someone with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree teaching a class. So you've got that professor who has his doctorate, and he's teaching you, the theory of algorithms, and you leave the class with your head swimming, and you're going to get through the class, but you don't really learn anything. And then you have that middle school teacher that and let's say that experience with the person with the doctorate, that's 70% of the class walks out of that class feeling that way, right? 70% of them walks out like with just enough knowledge to get through the class, but not enough knowledge to move forward
The
that
needle.
area of mathematics, right? But then you have a
Yeah.
teacher teaching, let's again, you're going to say, well, it's a simpler concept, but that
No, no,
teacher
I mean,
teaching.
I support you. I get your concept 100% in terms of,
Mhm.
how important. In fact, I think this whole last year is, hey, everyone who has a child that of school age, probably understands your point far more than they probably would have beforehand.
Mhm.
Cause not realize, like, man, teaching kids, like, man, as someone who, at one point was a teacher, um you know, for a few years in several different areas like that. They are teaching children concepts that they will use for the rest of their lives,
Mhm.
right? Especially at least good teachers. The good teachers with the right programs are, they're teaching concepts and things that kids will use and carry on to their adult years,
Yeah,
right? Well,
yeah,
yeah.
I agree. I think one thing that I can say about the Marine Corps is that the instructors were graded on how many people successfully passed the class. But I mean, when you pass a class in the Marine Corps, for the most part, you have to be able to do your job, right? So if that instructor wasn't good enough to impart the knowledge on the individual so that they could effectively do their job, that instructor was graded on that because that's his job. You have one job: teach this person how to fix this circuit board, teach this person how to attack a hill, teach this person how to lead a squad, teach this
You
person
had
how to
one job.
set up a radio, right? This is your job. And there, so if he's teaching classes and consistently 20-30% of his class can't do the job once the class is over, right? They get graded on that. And I think that that is very important, that is very important measure
The
of
issue
success, right?
the
And
issue is, I'll say, is actually that's where we're at right now. And I'm sorry, go on, finish your point.
so what I'm also saying is, again, this PhD doctor, he's making 30, 40, 50% more. And again, I'm just grabbing numbers. I know nothing about the pay than the middle school teacher or the Marine Corps instructor, class instructor. But he's turning out students consistently that really don't get what he's teaching. But the students who are
Or sometimes even
rewarded,
just failing.
well, or he's not being so. And I'm going to expand on that part that you said, sometimes just failing. He is he's turning out teachers that, I mean, students that aren't fully grasping the concept. They just get enough to move on, but not enough to do the job or even move the field forward. But he's also not being graded on, someone finishes his class and they say, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm going to quit college. This is not for me, right? And
Yeah.
and and sometimes I feel, and this is just a feeling, I feel like they're being rewarded for that because I'm putting up my air quotes, they're weeding out those who can't do. Right? So they're weeding
Yeah.
out the chaff, and getting those people to drop out of school. And like America has an over 50% college dropout rate, which is bonkers town. And schools are
Yeah.
continuously being rewarded for that. And kids are still leaving schools with no degree and deep in debt. Whereas in the military, these instructors are being graded on putting people out there that can effectively do the job, right? That are learning and hopefully moving that field forward, and 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 they're being rewarded for that, right? If a drill instructor, or I keep saying drill, I want to go back to instructor, but a class instructor has 20 students show up to his boss's office and say, I'm quit. You got to get me out of here. They're not going to they're not going to penalize the students, right? They're going to go to that instructor and be like, "What are you doing?" Right? What are you doing
Yeah.
that these students are saying they want to go home, but the professor that consistently has, a large portion of his class, not a large portion, has 10 or 15% of his classroom drop out a year, they never get penalized, right? They're those poor students, they just didn't have the ability to learn at that level, which I believe is garbage, right? But again,
Yeah.
what do I know? I'm not a teacher. I don't run a college.
No, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, because I mean that speaks to a lot of the issues I do have, with the way college and even just the general school system is run. Because the issue is they kind of do the same ish, like in terms of evaluate the teacher based on, or the school based on how many people graduate, or how many people, or how well they do. But it's all, well, problem is it's monetary incentives, so they're like, we get money or less money. But also the fact is it just causes them to try to turn out people to do well on test, right? As opposed to, let's say, so it's a real tricky thing, like how, because they are trying that, but how do you measure how well a school is doing? Like, I guess I can see college more of like how well, how many students, are you graduating that come along that have careers afterwards, and how well they're doing. I can kind of see that if you could somehow track that. But
Well, they
like
can
with high
track
school,
that,
like
but they've chosen not to do it in many cases, and
yeah,
this is what, has caused a lot of problems for some schools in the last 10 years, where they started tracking how many people have gone to the school and dropped out, how many people have gone to the school and graduated and found a job in their field. And they've found that many of these schools promising better lives for the students are not delivering on that promise. And so it's something that is very trackable. And a lot of schools have gotten in trouble for it, because they have been, you know, they have become mills where they're just turning students and getting a profit off of those students' failures. And the students left with thousands of dollars in debt and no education, or an education that is not equal to the task of helping them pay off that debt. So I'm glad that's coming to light. I do not think it's being addressed nearly as much as it needs to be addressed. It's something that's infinitely trackable, but schools are trying to keep that information from being tracked. Um, again, but
well,
this
yeah, because
this
I
is a
mean,
very different argument, right?
why
We
would I go to
we
your school if you're not going to get me a job? That was what my generation, and having KK maybe on another podcast, because she is still actively in school. Like that's what we were sold on. My entire generation was sold on. by you guys saying go to school, make good money, and we're like, and everything else and everything around us saying go to college, that's your only way to make money. And we're like, okay, we went to college, and then the colleges are just extended high school,
Well, so
but
this
with
is
drinking and
I so this
you
is
know,
what I want to
at least many
also.
of them,
Yeah, but I think that is not. I again, these are just my own opinions. I'm not a educational professional, not in the least bit. But in my opinion, another issue is that college is so different from high school. And what's the problem with that? So we've gone to school, for 12 years at this point, 12 formal years of education, and now we jump off into college, and it is vastly different than what we've done. That's like sending me to a class to learn how to make, muffins, and then when I graduate that class, the first job you put me into is how to make spaghetti, right? It's like, are you kidding me? I just spent 12
you
years
come
learning how to
come
make
out with a
muffins.
muffin.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, are you setting me up for failure? Again, I can only use the military as my example, um, but the military trains you to do what you will be doing, right? And you're trained on it again and again. You train the way you fight. And it would be ridiculous for me to go and spend a year and a half in a electronic school or a comm school, or 3 months or 4 months of my life in a school, and then get out and do something absolutely different. And this is what this is our education pipeline. It's To me, it's frustratingly ridiculous. But again, I'm judging something that I don't understand the intricacies of. But from
But I
simply
mean,
looking outside.
I think it's not even outside because I just said, I don't know if you mentioned, but or if you are mentioned, but you are working on your master's program,
Yeah.
right? And I have graduated with some certificates, because while I was in school, I realized I wasn't being taught to do my job, right? I wanted to be a digital producer, digital video production, and even my own teacher was telling me in 2014, don't do your final project on your cell phone. I had a Galaxy Note 2. I ended up doing my project on my cell phone because the camera guy messed up and didn't bring the tape or something. And we got an A. He didn't notice. And it was one of the things that showed me like how out of touch some, just the education system is with the, just the real world. And which, and that's a great example to say that, like, how different high school is to college, and then go from college to the real world, and you're like, this, none of this is the same. None of this is even close to the same,
Yeah. And
right?
and
Especially, and I
then
knew that.
and, and then if you add the element of, let's say you graduate high school, you make it out from an inner city high school that is in the middle of the ghetto. That is a far different experience than what you're going to get from a upper middle class neighborhood high school. Um, so you're even less prepared to go off to college and be successful, because now it's you're not at the education level that you need to be successful in the school, but and then there's the impact of the extremely different culture, right? Like, there's the culture shock for a person, let's say, growing up in Jamaica, Queens, right, um, going off to college. There's just a massive difference.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Especially as someone who has actually gone from a school in the inner city to a private school in the Middle East, to a school in the like super suburbs. Like, there are certain neighborhoods that around there had money. Um, there is a huge difference in the classes there, how they're taught, the kind of resources and attention that's given, and even then, my high school, my the final school I went to, which was the suburb school, was closer to my college experience mostly because I had finished so much school by then. I had enough credits that I was taking online classes and choosing what classes I did and didn't want to take because I had all my credits to graduate. I just needed to be there to get a degree, whatever. Um, but so they were just like, take whatever classes you want, and that it was like my college experience where I was like, I wasn't getting up the same time as everybody else. I was leaving before everybody else. Some of my classes were online. You know, I take classes in study hall or not. Like that was close to a college experience. Well, I didn't get any of that. I don't think I would have close gotten any of that if I stayed at the inner city school I was at, right?
Yeah.
But I also know at that private school in the Middle East, absolutely was very much closer, to a college experience in terms of the kind of freedom they gave you. But it still kind of would still be a shock if you went straight from that school to college.
Hmm.
But they do a much better job in preparing you. But for the money it costs, they better.
Definitely. I just also think that those things being said, that was part of my experience. The Marine Corps, I had a rough time there, but I also had a great time. They prepared me more for life in America, even though I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17, than all the years that I spent in America growing up. And again, that's having been born here in America, being born in Puerto Rico, and and but one of the most important things that I learned is that I can learn and that I can do. There's in the core, you're taught, just like you hear us tell our kids, oh, you can do anything you want to do. But my experience in the Marine Corps is that I not only have people telling me that, they're showing me examples of that. They're saying, if you want to get your run down to a 6 minute mile, right? And I can only talk. If you want to get your run down to a 6 minute mile, this is what you need to do. Do these things, and all of a sudden you do those things, and you're running a 6 minute mile. If you want to become a expert um, shooter, listen to what I'm saying, right? Breathe like this, trigger squeeze like this. If you do exactly what I'm saying consistently, you will become an expert shooter, right? And it's so when you have that reinforcement, you understand that it's partially you applying yourself, which is very important. And if you're not applying yourself, figure out why you're not doing what you need to do or what it takes to be successful. But it's it, it's also that there is a roadmap. There is a way to succeed at things, and that's where I think having a mentor is important. Because if you don't have a mentor, you can figure out how to succeed at something. It's just going to take you longer. It's going to be more work, and a lot of people get discouraged before they put in the work to get what they want. And I think a lot of people walk away from things that they would be world changing at before they get a chance just because of circumstance, just because it's hard. Everything's hard on day one, and it should be. Too if it's easy on day one, then you're not really challenging yourself, and you're not going to ever be amazing in that thing that you're doing. It's not going to give you the satisfaction that that you're seeking, or give you the what word am I looking for? The
Experience.
it's
It's like
experience,
the
but success.
it's the 10,000 hour rule, right? It's like the 10,000 hour. You can do something over and over, but if you're not doing it with deliberate practice and in terms of trying to improve,
Hmm.
you're not going to reach that mark.
Yeah,
Which is a very simplified. I'm not trying because I have a lot of thoughts on outliers and the people that kind of simplify the idea, but that the bare super oversimplification of it. Yeah.
I agree, and I also want to make the point though that hard work doesn't have to be miserable. It sometimes is, right? I like going to the gym, but there are days where I run so hard or I lift it so heavy, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? This is this is too much. But I still enjoy going to the gym. I think it's important to understand, that statement of hard doesn't have to make you unhappy. You don't have to be miserable, and you need to think about what you're doing. If you're doing something and it's hard and you're miserable while you're doing it and it's not producing the things that you want out of life, you have to really consider what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think that equation gets far more difficult as you get older, though, right? You take on more responsibilities and you get to be, again, my age, and there's far less latitude to say, I'm just going to stop and get up and walk away from all of this because you've got children, you've got a mortgage, you've got, the thing that you accumulated at this juncture in your life. So hopefully, you can figure out that equation far long before you accumulate all of these responsibilities. And I think if we had a mentor or had several mentors, we could all get there a little sooner.
No, I absolutely agree. It's one of the reasons why it's I feel like I might have been a little bit further in terms of certain things I was doing, certain pathways, if the person that I wasn't, had posed as my mentor died or passed away back when I was like 17, like right before I left the country. So it was kind of not having that guiding figure to be like, even to this day, come back to be like, hey, I'm doing this stuff now. How do you think about this? Right? Especially to imagine when he was 35 when he passed. So, all the things he would be doing today.
Yeah, he was
So,
a baby.
yeah,
So young.
like left a child, like 3-year-old child, right? So it's heartbreaking every time I think about it. But he was someone that, like I said, I told you before, I, open my mind to being like that there isn't just one way of going about what you want, or not one, or going about life, right? There isn't just one path. When I was in school and I was in an engineering program, and I hated it. I hated how the teacher was. God forbid that he was probably a pedophile. He was a pedophile. He got arrested. uh, Way too many pedophiles at my school. And I just didn't like the class, right? He made engineering boring. um and I was hanging out in the computer room, and he was saying, and I just, was listening to me, which I think is a understated trait that parents often don't give teachers, is the fact that oftentimes a good teacher is just there to listen to your kid in a way that many parents don't or won't or can't, right? Or like don't have the time, right? Um, but especially though that really got into teaching because they love to teach, and they care about children, right? The big understated aspect is that they listen to them, right? And they understand like the things they're going through. um Not all teachers can all teach good, but the ones that care, right? Like this one. But he was, and he listened to all of us. He was that known as that teacher. That's why there was a huge turnout at his funeral. But listen to me, and they saying like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I like hanging out here. And it was like the computer lab. So like his classroom is the computer lab. So like there's like 20 computers in the room all lined up and stuff like that. And I'm like, I like hanging out here. Hanging out, mess with the computers and stuff. I see you guys working on stuff. That seems cool. He's like, all right, yeah, I'll sign you up for my class. You can pull out of that class and sign into mine. Really? And I think it was like in middle of the year, so it's not something that really happens, right? But this was a guy, and a white man, right? This was a white man that was like, hey, this is what you want to do. I completely support it, and throughout and he became my mentor from that point, because like, the times where I would deal with certain teachers, where I had like this one, young white lady teacher, yeah, who, like I said, like saying with you, where she doesn't understand you, doesn't understand the culture, doesn't understand like, the problems, so labels you as stupid or a troublemaker or whatever. He was often that teacher that had my back, right? That was like, no, I know him. Relax. Even to the point where, when she tried to get other people, like administration, they knew me. They're like, oh, you? get out of here. And then we'll chastise the teacher, be like, what are you doing? Like, are you just going after him? Is he really a problem? Like, he's been here, you just got here, he's been here for 3 years, right? And he's never been an issue. Like, what's going on? But it's very important to have those people, in your life to, like I said, push you in that direction. And even though I had a teacher, funny, like me talking about having those people that, encourage, that get you to end up quitting. That happened to me when I was in that private school and I was taking programming classes, and I just did not like the way it was taught. I didn't like the class. It made programming boring to the point where I was like, I don't want to do anything in tech. I want to dance. like it was just that dramatic. I was like, that's it. I'm just gonna dance. Forget tech. But now I'm back. I'm literally programming video games. So imagine the difference it would have on my life if I just enjoyed that Java class.
Yeah, I think
Enjoyed
that's
the way that
important.
teacher taught.
I think you have
Um,
you make a really good point of it's important that we revisit things also, and sometimes work to find different instructors versus just never going back or never doing something again. Um, because you may have a talent for that, and it's just that the teaching style of the the instructor didn't mesh with the way that you learn. And so I
yeah.
these things are important, right? But I learned a lot in the core, and I learned that I can learn, and that motivated me to go to school. And it moved me towards tech, and it motivated me to, once I got out of the Marine Corps, to dive deeper into tech, but also to pursue my degree in computer information systems, and which pushed me towards my career field here. It helped me discover that I have a talent for making things work. I'm not the most articulate individual. I can't tell you the science behind why these things work better together this way, but I can look at something that is broken in the technical field, a system that's not operating, a network that is broke, that comes down, or someone's having a problem building, and I can figure out, given enough time. And again, I'm not saying like this is an amazing skill. It's just what I can do. But given enough time, I can solve that problem, you know? And then I also believe another, skill set that I have is I'm able to solve that problem in a manner that it's not going to reappear. Well, this is the problem. Let's resolve that issue. But now, what can we do to ensure that the next problem is not the same problem, right? There is going to always be another problem, but let's fix our system in a manner that we resolve this issue, and try and figure out why it happened. And that's just the way. That's just something I do. Not saying it's something no one else can do, because I'm sure there's tens of millions of other people that can do this thing, but it's what I can do and what I enjoy doing. Um, but I still don't believe I found like that career, and I'm 51 years old, right? That career, or that job that I'm like waking up every morning doing backflips out of bed to do. So,
What
but
if you made a bed that forced you to do a backflip?
then at 51 years old, I'd probably break my neck in about a week. So you'd be visiting me in
Okay,
the
well, let's
hospital.
scratch that idea. Let's scratch that idea off. But yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And I think that's that combined with my point of the fact that and it wasn't just the fact that he brought me to tech and I'm brought back around, but the thing that he taught me was just looking for what brings you fulfillment, right? And of course, I think one of the most ridiculous things that we try to push on the kids is always, I think, I'm like, well, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? I'm like, I don't even know what I want to do next week. I don't even know if I even want to wear these clothes or have this haircut in a year. What do you mean the rest of my life?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? But yeah, but we expect this from children, right? All the way to 18, and then pick your college decisions and thousands of dollars were based on something that, I know I am nothing like my 18-year-old self, right? There's a lot of things, and while I my path has been diverse, and everything that I've gone through, I feel like has accumulated to, who I am, and or at least I try my best to make that be, and that's, episode for another day. But it's we all change, right? And this idea that we have to know who we are, that's what we're teaching kids, is you have to know who you are by the time you go to college, or by the time you leave college you're supposed to know who you are. I'm like, I left college years ago. I still don't know who I was like that, like I know myself now, and the things I want to do now, the things I wanted to do. You remember the things the way I wanted to live back in college is very different than the way I want to live now, right?
Yeah.
It'd be, as an artist back then when I was young, and now here I am trying to build a business. Like, and while they're kind of in similar fields, the way I want to live is completely different. But imagine if, I was taught differently in a way of looking at things, as opposed to being like, you got to know what you want to do. And always having him in the back of being like, yo, it's okay if this isn't what you're about, right? Figure it out,
Yeah.
move on to something else if that's what it is. But don't waste your life, as you said, don't waste your life all the way till you're 60 doing stuff you don't like, and then be like, well, I really hated this, and
Yeah.
but not have enough vertical to be able to move.
Yeah. I think what's amazing to me is how we keep perpetuating that system, even though that many of us, especially people who study this, have shown evidence time and time again that this isn't the best route. This isn't the best way to go. So it's interesting that we keep doing it the same way, you know.
Right,
Um,
it's definition of insanity.
mhm. So exactly the definition of insanity.
um, but yeah, so that being said, I think the overall point is find yourself a mentor, make sure they're decent, make sure they care, and just find someone that's where you want to be, and hopefully they can teach you a thing or two, and it'll help you get to where you want to be, or at least find someone that'll look out for you, because this individualism, the individualistic mindset of America, is not how it is. There are no self-made men, right? We are community building each other. And with that being said, I'm Lucid,
And I'm D.
and this is Widen Your Lens. See you guys next week.